A lot of people try to avoid California if they live in California, like I live in California, and they want to avoid the 800, franchise fee, the minimum franchise fee that you have to pay for a business. Hello. So you've decided to start a company. I want to create a series of videos that talks about the process of starting a company from technical perspective. In other words, all these different technologies you can use to get your company started, software, get your tech stack like email setup, website, all of these things in the most cost effective way. And I'll talk about the process of creating companies as well a little bit, just to give you a little bit of advice. Now, before we start, a very important disclaimer, everything I'm going to say, you have to do it on your risk, at your own risk. None of this is considered a legal advice. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a CPA. So you definitely need to seek a lawyer advice for all the legal stuff. And for any financial stuff, you definitely want to speak with an accountant and a CPA. None of what I'm going to say is an advice and should not be taken as so. Just take it as just you browse the web and you found some information. So I'm going to talk about from picking the name, getting the company started, all the way to have everything set up from technical perspective. In this video, we're going to talk about the name. So picking the name can be tricky and can be easy. Most likely you have some sort of name idea in your brain, and sometimes you're really attached to a name. So what matters is you pick the name, and if you want to have a website or you require some marketing or digital presence, which is important in a lot of cases, you definitely want to pick a domain name, which a lot of people like to do really, before they do anything. A lot of people just acquire domain names without doing any businesses. So now, before we go into picking the name, because picking the name, there are things you need to check before you pick the name. You need to make sure you understand where you're going to establish your business. So let's talk about where the location of the business, where you're going to form your company. And then we'll talk about the types of companies in the next video and how you can form the company. So in terms of location, a lot of people try to avoid California if they live in California, like I live in California, and they want to avoid the 800, franchise fee, the minimum franchise fee that you have to pay for a business. Now, if you read, about this on the internet, you find a lot of documentation about it. Just the summary of it: if your company is going to have a single founder who lives in California, then it's probably better to found the company in California, because if you create the company elsewhere, you're going to be required by law to have what's called a foreign qualification. Essentially, you create a foreign entity that points to your entity somewhere else outside the state, and then you still pay the franchise fee. So you end up having sort of like two entities. Now, if your business is going to be online, so you're not going to have an actual physical business here or an office, or you're not going to hire employees in California, and if you have founders who are outside the state, so most of the founders are outside California, then definitely create your startup elsewhere. And there are those places that are very attractive for forming companies, like Delaware, state of Wyoming, and Texas, and others, because they don't have state taxes, and some of them are attractive for startups like Delaware. Now, the other thing you need to think about is, are you planning to build a company that will become a startup? You want it to grow big, and you want to seek investment for institutional investors like VCs. In that case, they really like Delaware, and they really like a C Corp. We'll talk about that in more details. But pick the state you're going to open your company at, because when you pick your name, you have to do one check. You need to make sure that name is not taken in the state where you're gonna create your company. Because if the name is taken, that means it's a headache, right? So the formation might be rejected or will be rejected. And if it's accepted and then somebody has the name, you have to change the name, which is possible, but it's a headache. So you're gonna make sure the name is unique. And most of the states have a state website. So California has SOS. The Secretary of State website, they actually have renewed it now, and you can go do a name search, and it will show you all the businesses that have the name that you picked. So make sure the name is not taken. Usually, it's easy to come up with a random name than using a common name. I'll leave that to you. And then obviously the type of the company, if it's LLC or a corporation, that suffix will also play a role in the name. The second place you need to check on, sometimes it is the trademark. So you go to USPTO, So that's the website for trademark and patents. And then you can do a search for the name to make sure that nobody has a trademark for a name. So that will, so you prevent, problems down the road. So these two things you need to check. And then after you make sure that you have a unique name, you can go ahead and register the name. So how can you register the name? So some states allow you to reserve a name, like California. That's not really necessary if you're going to form right away. But if you're going to wait until you form, you want to reserve the name, you can go ahead and do that. Now, the other thing that founders do is they buy a domain. So buy a domain name, especially if you want to have a presence online. So for this, I recommend going to GoDaddy. There are a number of websites out there that allow you to register a domain. GoDaddy is one of the oldest ones now. GoDaddy, because a lot of the other companies, cloud services, online services, they integrate with it really well. So you'll find establishing email or setting up other things related to your domain name, like creating a website, might be almost technical free. Like you don't require anything. It'll just provide access to GoDaddy and it will do it for you. Now, if you find the domain name cheaper elsewhere, which is possible, I don't think there'll be big differences in prices, so you can find it in google.com domains. You still can register there, and then you can transfer the domain from the registrar, that other company, to GoDaddy registrar, usually for no cost or very low cost. So when you pick the name, make sure you pick, again, a unique name. I wouldn't recommend you as a founder to spend a lot of money on domain names, especially if it's a new business. Try to pick a name that is available, and usually short names are really expensive. Try to pick a name for $1 or up to $11. That's really possible. And then if there is a name that you really want and your business succeeds, you're definitely going to have the time, the money to acquire that name. So pick the name, register the name, and you are ready for the next step. So hopefully that's helpful. In the next video, we're going to talk about how can you form the company, which tool to use to get the paperwork done, the formation done. There are 3 common tools out there that are really great. Watch the next video for more information.